I'm making a video, Beth.
Okay.
Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. We had an interesting visit to the bank today. It was the second that we've had. Not a question about whether we have an account at this bank. It's just a question of how the system works here, and it's not like anything that you probably have if you're an expat living in any of the Western world. Then it probably isn't going to be like this. When you go into a bank here, you always receive a number, and there's always a lot of seats where you're expected to sit and wait patiently until your number comes up. Sorry, an unfortunate way of putting it that, but until they call your number. And if you're a senior, you get to go to the front because you get preferential treatment, and that's where I come in. Well, I really hate to do that because it just seems to me that it's, I don't know, like rubbing the nose in it of people who actually own this country, namely Filipinos and Filipinas, and they could be forgiven for thinking, well, why the hell they'll see me as a foreigner before they'll see me as a senior, I think. Well, anyway, that's happened in the past, okay. So I eventually went, and instead of getting in line, I went and sat at a desk that actually was unoccupied. Now, they'll have people working on these desks around, and there'll be 4 or 5, and there's usually two chairs by this desk. Now, in a way to guarantee someone's privacy, if you were sitting at a desk, if you were sitting waiting at a desk for someone from the bank to come and deal with you, which they would if you sat there long enough, no one else in the West, no one else would come and sit at that chair at the table with you because you will be there to do your business. But here it doesn't work that way. Someone else will come and sit at the table with you. When you get to do your business, another poor choice of words, when you get to attend to what you came to do, then there's some stranger is sitting in on the deal with you. Obviously, if you're with your wife, then the two of you occupy those chairs. Now, there's 2 ways that this can work. It can work if someone else is sitting there. It's quite acceptable for you to go and sit in the other chair, even though they are still doing the business that they came to do for the bank. Well, I went and sat down, and then I was joined by a lady that I have no idea who she was, and she sat down in the other chair. Well, nobody came to attend to us, so in the end I just indicated to Beth, who was sitting in the main seated area, look, I'm tired of this, I'm going. But she still had something to do there, so she didn't go. So I walked to the door thinking that she would follow me, and then evidently, as she had something else to do, she didn't. So I came back again, and she said, just go and sit there and they'll deal with you. Well, that's how it worked. But I had to explain to Beth why I would not sit at another chair. Now, because I would be in respect of the other person's privacy. So if there's the other chair is vacant, then I would not take my turn and go up and sit in that chair. I hope you're getting the picture of this. So I don't go up there, and of course somebody else does because they know the system, and they go and sit, and they are dealt with next. So it can be a very frustrating thing, but that's just the preamble. When you actually get someone who is going to deal with you, now we had a payment that was made to us via Remittance, and it was for I think a sum of around 8,000 pesos. not an enormous amount of money, okay? A very generous gift, but not an enormous amount of money to cause a big stir. Well, the first time that we went into the bank was a few days ago, and they said, no, you need your passport. And I said, I'm only required to show ID, and I have government ID. I have my driver's license, which is a photo ID issued by the government, and I also have my, I think it's called an ACR or an ACI card, which is what you get when you're a senior. So I said, I have these, and they are issued by the Philippine government, and that should be enough. No, it has to be your passport. Well, we're talking about a payment being made in pesos. So it's not like it was a huge amount of money being made in dollars. See, so it shouldn't have been very complicated. Anyway, in the end, I gave up, as Beth indicated I should, and we came back a few days later with my passport, and that's where I was today. So I sit there and I wait. Eventually, even though someone else was sitting at the other chair, I thought, I get the picture, and I went and I sat down, feeling as if I was imposing myself on this other woman. Well, she quickly signed the document she had to, and I didn't understand what was being said anyway, so much for their privacy. Then the lady asks, what can I do for you? And Beth joins us and takes over in Visayan. Well, it turns out that yes, we can do this, but the woman advises us, it would be better if you arrange for payment to be made in Cebuana. Because, and she didn't actually say this, but she should have done, what's going to happen next is going to absolutely kill you. Well, she brings out two forms. One of them is a fairly short form, and the other one is a long form. And just to pay money, which they are authorized to do through Remitly, the bank expect you to give a huge amount of personal information, which has nothing to do with the payment that you are receiving. For instance, if my friend John, say, sends a payment to me of X amount of pesos, and he sends it, and he is a friend or relative, what difference would it make? Let's say that he's a friend. So John sends a payment to me, and I go in there and I offer eventually I offer my passport. So now I've offered what they want in terms of ID, and then they want to know all kinds of other information. What is this person to you? Now, are they friend? Are they relative? Are they, I don't know, for all I know, are they working abroad? Are they this? But definitely they wanted to know, what is the money to be used for? I'm just sort of puzzled as to what that could possibly have to do with them operating as the go-between for a fee of a small amount of money. What would it possibly have to do with anything? Well, Beth filled out that form as best she could, giving information she was prepared to give, and then she handed that to the lady who was a representative of the bank, a bank worker. The bank lady then went over the form and asked further questions until it got to the point where I thought, this is an intrusion into our privacy. We shouldn't have to give this much information. It's not that the information is so personal, it's just that every time you go into one of these establishments and you give a load of information, that information is not confidential. Whatever they say, it's not confidential. For one thing, that you are offering it in order to be able to, in this case, in order to be able to receive a payment. And they are going to offer that information into the computer, even though in the Philippines most of this stuff is handwritten. But then there's hard copy that anybody can look at. So let's suppose that instead of it being a relatively small amount of 8,000, let's suppose that it was 80,000, which is still not a huge amount of money in terms of pounds or dollars, whether US or Aussie. But that would be a large sum of money here, and that money is being paid to you on production of a great deal of personal information as to what you're going to use it for. So let's say that you give that information. What is it going to be used for? Now, if I were to completely tell the truth, I would be giving out a lot of information that should not be given out. If I, like in the course of this conversation today, Beth, I heard, even though I don't speak the language fluently, I'm beginning to pick up certain nuances and words, and I'm beginning to get the picture. She said non-profit. Well, that didn't take out a lot of brain surgery, did it? A non-profit, and the woman said, oh, I see. And so now they know that we are operating a non-profit charity, which they have no right to know. And now they're looking at other information to do with a large sum of money in Philippine mindset. If you're talking to a lady, as Beth has revealed, when we first got married, she was earning 10,000 pesos. I'm not sure, I don't think that was per week, by the way. I think that was per month. So 10,000 pesos per month, supposing it was 80,000. Now we're looking at months of salary for the person who is dealing with your inquiry or requirement or required service. Can you see how it starts to get rather messy? Now, when governments are asking for certain amounts of information, it's one of those things that, let's suppose for a moment, just to put it into some kind of context, let's suppose that you had to talk to, say, 5 people at the bank, and each one asked you a different piece of information. So one may have asked for your birth certificate, your birth date. Another may ask for your where you live. Another for your phone number. Another for when you first came to the Philippines. Another for where your bank account is. And can you see that? Put all of that together, and it starts to form a composite picture of you. Now, during the conversation, all kinds of other information may be imparted and noted down. And the more information that you give out, the more likely you are, even on a fairly benign front, you might start receiving advertisements for, I don't know, for underwear, for shirts, for trousers, for cars, for houses, for any kind of personal loans. And now you are being targeted, and this is a fact in the States. It is a fact in the UK. I think it's a fact in Australia, and probably in the other extremely regulated places that you can live. Anywhere where the infrastructure is such that you are given instant service, then it's going to be highly regulated. Now, I saw something on Facebook today, and it said, I believe 150 billion people in India have received the chip. Now, I know it's seems to have gone a long way from talking about the bank, but what we're talking about was my experience of being asked to furnish a great deal of information which had nothing to do with the service that I was expecting to receive, and which I had a right to receive, because the bank had agreed at some point in the past to act as a go-between for Remitly. They must have some deal going with Remitly where they agree that that money can come through them. So it's all agreed. Now, India apparently has been giving that chip. Now, you may have seen this advertised in America. Now, if you talk to a strongly biblical-based person, and a Christian, they will tell you about the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is one where you will not, and it says apparently in Revelations, that you will not be allowed to buy something if you don't have the mark of the beast. Now, if that comes in the form of a chip, don't think about something that you think about this as being a chip. Look, I mean, you could say this is a chip. That's about the size of a USB stick. Maybe that's a little bit small for a stick, but we're not talking about this. We're talking about something which, if you look at this as a hypodermic, the chip can be passed into your skin from this hypodermic. Look at this now. Where are we looking? Where's the camera? All right, trying to find where the damn thing is. I can't find it. So we're really looking at something which is so tiny as to actually not even be felt, and it contains all kinds of personal information. Now, of course, the establishment, banks, doctors, the social security system, the IRS, oh gosh, I wonder how that came into being, the government, who are always out for your best interests. Who could suspect that the IRS were not out for your best interest? It's just too hard to even think about. They can all read that card. You go, now what, the way that it's being promoted to us is, well, just look at it this way. No matter where you go, you can go into an office of a doctor, you can go into the hospital. If you were knocked down, it's always some terrible scenario in which you will be helpless, and you'll go in there and literally, I don't know, they'll pass a metaphorical hand over your head and they will know everything about you. Yeah, doesn't that sound wonderful? I guess if you're going to be knocked down and you might be at the point of death, you might think that knowing your blood type would be very, very handy. Of course, the old-fashioned way of getting a blood type is still there, so we don't really need to have that. But it will give all kinds of other information, but it will give it to anybody who has the wherewithal to be able to read it. Now, right now, today, I was talking to my friend Brian, and in conversation it came about that we talked about the, what was he, 12 or 14-year-old boy in America that was so clever with the computer that he actually hacked into the government defense system, and I believe that he had some of the passcodes. I'm not quite sure, but He was into the defense system. Can you imagine that? So, if some 12-year-old kid can do that in the most highly secure computer system possibly in the world, if not the most carefully cared for, think how easy it would be for anybody to get into this little pinprick here that's long ago healed up and get any information from you. Now, that's in the receiving side of things. What about if we're talking about the input side of things? Now, here you are a walking USB, which others have access to putting in information. Okay, now, there was a movie that was put out, and it was about a man who had a bad hair day, and he crashed into somebody, and he couldn't be bothered to handle it, and he was fairly well off, and he just gave the man, I don't know, $2,000. It gave him enough. It was a small amount. He said, look, just handle it, okay? Don't go through the end. Just handle it. And he drove away. The man wanted to handle it strictly correctly, and that's what he started to do, and it caused a great deal of inconvenience to the man who was fairly well off. So the man who was fairly well off got so ticked off about this because he had so many horrendous personal issues going on right now that he went to a hacker and said, I want this guy messed up. And the man who was sitting behind a computer said, how messed up do you want him? And he said, I want the whole thing. What will it cost? Didn't matter how much it cost because he had a lot of money. So he paid the hacker to go into all of the information on this poor man who just wanted to do things right. They changed his credit score. They put stuff in there which was completely wrong, but because it went into the computer, when the man went to confirm his bank loan for his house, what had already been done and agreed and just needed to be rubber stamped because he complied with everything, they said, okay, let me just pull your case up. This is at the bank again. And they type it in, and then they discover, well, you were late. You were late on payments and so and so and so and so. The man says, no, I never had a loan with them. Or they said, well, you didn't tell us that you had a bankruptcy. I have no bankruptcy. Well, sorry, sir, it's here on the computer, and we have to go by the computer. So, the guy was completely messed up, and all at the hands of someone sitting in a little office with his hands on the keyboard. So now, back to us with our little pinprick. Apparently it's going into the forehead. Can you imagine that? Isn't that what Revelation says? And I'm not biblical. So now we are a programmable part of a system which is, depending on your viewpoint, out to get you or out to take care of you. Yours is the choice as to how you see that. I know that because of incorrect information on a friend of mine, they actually revoked it on the computer. They revoked his driver's license. Now, how would anybody know? Because if it's hard copy, they actually need to get your driver's license, don't they? Well, actually, no, they don't. Because what happened to my friend was, it went into the system. His driver's license was cancelled. Who would find out about that? Well, an insurance company would, because they are part of the system. And if he was driving along and the police suddenly ended up on his tail, which they often do if they've got nothing else to do, especially in America and in the UK, you'll be driving along, and there might be something about your car or you might be the wrong colour, and don't say that that doesn't happen, because it's called racial profiling. Now, depending on how you look, they might just decide to follow you. Now, when the police start to follow you, you start to act strange, because you're starting to go, why are they doing that? So you take a right turn where normally you would be going straight on. They take a right turn as well. Then you think, what the hell? And you take a left turn, or you take another right turn. Now you're going in the opposite direction. So now they pull you over. Then they ask a very simple question. Where are you going, sir? Where have you been? And where are you going? And as soon as you say where you're going, and you're heading in the wrong direction, now they know it. But they knew it before they pulled you over, because they put the number of your car into their computer, and they looked it up, and sure enough, there it said, Terence. Ah, Terence. And what do we know about Terence? Well, we know that his driver's license, if you're like my friend, when they looked up my friend George, they said, well, we know that his driver's license has been revoked, but he is driving. Pull him over. Then they know that you're not insured, because they know that the insurance company is part of that system. So back to the bank. I know it's always a long way round whenever I start talking about something, but all of these things are related, and it's the kind of thing that those militant people who are up in arms at seemingly innocent little things which impinge on our liberty, on our rights of privacy, and we get annoyed with them sometimes, civil liberties and so on. They're out there trying to make sure that these things don't go through. Well, I don't know how good your history is, but I remember when Mahatma Gandhi passed, was it his wife or his daughter, she actually pulled people in, men, off the street, and she sterilized them. Just imagine that. So imagine being pulled in off the street under police escort and just taken in. Well, what's this about? We're just going to give a check. Apparently there's some kind of an alert or something, and they take you in, and the next thing, you've been anaesthetized, and you've had the family jewels severely restricted. That's what happened to many, many Indians. Look it up in history. I'm sure that you'll find that I'm right. So governments are benign, or not. Banks are benign or not. I don't see banks as being benign at all. I think it's organised crime, because when the fees come in, you will never know what hit you. If you have, in the Philippines, so far, the idea of a credit card is still on the shelf. It's coming, but not everywhere can you buy on a credit card. Not everywhere can you get a credit card. And in most stores, they look at you as if you are from Mars if you suggest that you can actually pay for it on a credit card. No. But every time that Beth goes in to make a deposit in the bank, they say to her, but you're putting in money, why don't you have a credit card? And she says, I don't want a credit card, because she's spoken to me at length. So credit cards, everybody in the US is thought statistically, and it may have gone up drastically since I saw these figures. Every adult had about 10 grand, $10,000 on a credit card, and were paying off maybe a few dollars over the minimum amount. Boy, you'll be a long time dead when that's paid off. And we all know that, but we all ignore it. Now, right now, they're not doing that here, because credit cards are not a done deal yet, but it will come. And then when that comes in, you will get the whole organized crime come in. You will get late payments. Late payments will also be accompanied by, you can bet your life, people are going to charge up to the hilt. And then they'll have a standing loan. So they probably will operate right on the cusp of being on their credit limit or off it. So if they get there a little bit late, which can occur so easily, they now have a late charge. As soon as you have a late charge, if you're right on the outer limits of your limit, then you will be over the limit. So you will have an over the limit charge. Now, instead of paying off, say, $10 as the minimum payment, now you've got $10, you got plus a late fee, plus an over the limit fee, and instead of being able to keep things sane for $10, you got to come up with, I don't know, $30, $40, $50, especially if it goes on for a lot. And then they can keep accruing those charges, and soon it will be totally out of control. So we didn't get that money today, and in the end I took the form and I crumpled it up, and the lady said to me, I'm sorry, I hope you understand. And I said, no, I don't. And of course Beth is smiling, because that's the way. And we left. So now we have to go back to our friend and say, sorry, can you put this for pickup through Cebuana instead of the bank? When the bank, it should be so easy to do that, but it's not. So that's my experience of the bank today. What shall we say? I just got the title down as a trip to the bank. Safe guardians of our money. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you're still here, good on you. And bye for now. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.